This is the entire Star Wars trilogy. And this is the Lord of the Rings. Okay, before I can explain myself, let's talk about color really quick. Specifically color in storytelling. Like music or visual composition, color palettes subconsciously portray emotion. A good story, from my experience, is simply a compelling collage of emotions. When it comes to movies and games, we're given the privilege of activating almost all of our senses in an effort to entertain, inspire, or provoke. But how do films and games do it? How do the creators know the right colors for the right environments? Or how do they decide what colors a scene should be? Like most everything in life, you have to plan ahead. Not knowing what the future has in store, you have to imagine it and block it out. Usually before you go to the store, you'll write down a grocery list. Before you start painting, you need a sketch. The same goes for creating color composition. In the immediate sense, that would be a single image and the color scheme for that scene. But how do you decide what each scene's colors should be so that when they are comprised together, it tells a story? You need a way to see the entire story from a bird's eye view and visualize the story progression. That's where color keys come in. In films and games, a lot of times the art director will have color keys made in order for the whole team to reference and understand the end goal. Each shot, or at least each sequence, will be very quickly painted in small color thumbnails. In pre-production, this makes for an easy, dynamic way to block out and brainstorm the general colors of the entire story. In the end, when you play that game or you watch that movie, you might not even notice that they went to the trouble. But if done right, you'll definitely feel it. Other than a few examples of storyboards that studios like Disney or Pixar have shared, how do we see stories in their color progression? Well, let's go back to the beginning of this video. These are movie barcodes. A movie barcode essentially compresses an entire movie into a single image. What you see here is every frame from the movie scaled down to 1 pixel wide and lined up in a row to create this barcode-like image. Here's a question. How well can you recognize movies based off of their color palette? Let's play a little game and find out. Below are 3 movie barcodes. One is Aladdin, one is Finding Nemo, and one is The Lion King. Which one's which? You've got 3 seconds. Okay, how about these? Star Wars: A New Hope, Blade Runner, and Mad Max. Which one's which? So as you can see, without even watching the movie, you can imagine the hot deserts in Mad Max contrasting the few cool night scenes, giving you just enough of a break to plunge right back into the action. Or the deep reds at the end of The Lion King, emphasizing the intense climax. Colors for storytelling are all about relativity. They can't stand alone. What happens before it? What happens after it? How do they contrast each other? A color only means something when it has a relationship with another. The funny thing about color is, it's a lot different than you would usually think. When we were kids, we used to color water blue and the sun yellow, but that's only because it's the closest thing to blue in the picture, and the sun is the closest thing to yellow. We picture colors in our mind based off of the colors around them. In James Gurney's book, Color and Light, he explains how sometimes the colors we see are not always the colors that are used. Because colors are so dynamic and somehow create this fluent visual language, they can assist in the mood and emotion of a story. When I watched The Lord of the Rings for the first time, I was pretty young. I watched all 3 of them back to back. It was probably one of the best experiences for me when I think about storytelling with color. You start out in this very saturated, warm, green environment, and as the story progresses, you don't even notice it right away. But when you get toward the end of the series, you realize how much darker and colder everything feels. Once the ring is finally gotten rid of, the movie ends in a very warm, comforting palette. The same thing happened when I played Bioshock Infinite. You make it to the main game area and are greeted with warm, welcoming colors. But the colors change as you progress until the final boss, where you understand the intensity of the situation simply by its dramatic color palette. Vertigo is an example a lot of people like to use because it employs very blatant colors to get the story across. As you watch the film, you realize colors represent certain characters, while other colors emphasize John Ferguson's mood. So I guess all of this is to say that I'm doing my best to follow these very principles in our game. Since we're moving into the polish phase of development, I'm really trying hard to perfect the colors of our game. And because we're trying to tell a story without any words, audio and visual feedback is extra important. I hope that when it's finished, the colors in our game will excite and compel someone the same way it did for me when watching The Lord of the Rings. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you're interested in this project, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and if you're interested in the game enough, be sure to wishlist it on Steam.